All right, welcome to the webinar, y'all. We're going to be talking about organic intelligence here and why the end of trauma, and not only why, but how. Thank you for joining here on this webinar. Organic Intelligence is an international training organization, and what we are training for is to be better and do better, and really to do better by being better. You know, the world is filled with people who are, on the one hand, there are those who are sort of mucking things up, and those of us that are trying to fix it. And you know, it's a little bit like going behind the elephants at the circus parade. We have our hands full here, but we have really the need for sustainability, and that sustainability is a biology that is really fully functional. So that fully functional biology then has a special source, a special fuel, a rocket fuel for sustainability. And the good news from the standpoint of complexity science, from organic intelligence, from really the way that our biology operates, that sustainable fuel is joy. This is really good news that I want to share with you now, and it will mean the end of trauma as a clinical approach. It won't mean the end of trauma in terms of what the world is doing in terms of the epidemic that is trauma, right? If you're familiar from a clinical standpoint from the ACEs studies, you know that the production of trauma and the early disruption and for humans is just a massive epidemic. So I'm not talking about ending trauma from the standpoint of trying to eradicate it from the planet, although yeah, sure, we can work at that. But really, it's that our treatment approaches have been flawed really seriously. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, about why the current sort of buffet of trauma healing approaches need a little adjustment. Or maybe just a lot of adjustment, and then see if this makes sense to you. I'm really curious. You have a Q&A section down there, and I have questions open. I'll be happy to take your questions as we are going through here. If you would, if you have questions, then maybe write them down. We have a website, of course, which is Organic Intelligence, and we have also this End of Trauma course that is happening as well. It'll be starting up in July. So I'm going to talk to you more about that, why the end of trauma, how to experientially learn about your organic intelligence, and that's the name of our game. So thank you so much for joining tonight. Here's how I would like to begin. I am Steve Hoskinson, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar. There are going to be replays for this, so if you're watching on a replay or on YouTube or any place, I'm so just grateful to be here to share with you on this process. Tomorrow we'll be on a plane for France and Plum Village, and I hope they're ready for us there. Here's what I would like to begin with here. I'd like to begin with this search for trauma healing. And I guess really what I should do is share with you this model. Really, this all hinges on this three-phase model. And this is right out of complexity science. And this is why this is important, because everybody, people and approaches, they all hinge on, or they all are working without regard to these three phases. And these three phases are just the ways that complex systems like your human biology functions and shifts from one phase to another. And this is fairly well documented. It's fairly well described in complexity science. It's used by people who have a bunch of money, like on Wall Street. If you're looking at the rocket trading that happens, or people that are really using this for like engineering or the use in pharmacological explorations. They're really modeling how complex systems operate, how they stay in metastable states, how they shift. And so this is this three-phase map, and this is really Shiva, Vishnu, and and the whole notion of these three forces, which is the destroyer, the sustainer, and the creator. These are three archetypic forces that then are reflected in how complex systems work. If you've ever wondered, why does everybody have this three-phase model? It's because things happen in these three phases. And in order to understand the way our biology works, we would want to understand from a clinical standpoint, as a therapist or as a coach, I would need to speak to the person's system, understanding, am I speaking to phase one? Am I speaking to phase two? Am I speaking to phase three? Phase one is simply a system that is really drastically limited and de-evolving. It's ready it's holding on, for dear life. We can then find a system and coach a system into phase two, where it is beginning to grow, it's beginning to get traction. And then the good news in all of this is that from resilience, we can move to prosilience, which is not just being able to bounce back. In the world of resiliency literature and mindfulness and positive psychology, resilience is spoken of as being able to bounce back. Bouncing back is very good. It's better than, bouncing out, from the phase one standpoint. Phase two, sure, bouncing back is excellent. How fast can you recover from, disaster, chaos, trauma, injury, and so on? But really, what we have in organic intelligence is a reliable method for moving systems and seeing systems' natural movement into self-organization, where they're not just ready to bounce back. That's great. That's phase two. But where they are able to move forward. So that moving forward and that growth and that development in sustainable abilities and all of the systems working, all together in this finely tuned fashion, that's the end game for us in organic intelligence. Because if your system is better tuned, if your system is better sustained, then you're going to be able to naturally express your human nature on the planet. And what is that human nature? It's compassion, it's love, it's responsibility. It is also typified by this Sanskrit term called nishkama karma, which is another word for being an artist of your own life. Nishkama karma means to be able to respond into the world, but without attachment to the outcome. That is, I am aiming and working, on, say, issues around global warming, systemic oppression, racism, and white privilege, and so on. Working on these, not because, okay, now we're really going to solve this problem. That's the recipe for activist burnout. We ain't got time for that, and there's no need for it, because it is my pleasure that guides me. And we'll talk a lot more about that as we go. Let's let me then shift quickly then to saying this is for everybody. If you're a therapist, we've got mad skills for you. I've been teaching in this area. I've been teaching therapists for really over 20 years. And now we are working not only for therapists, but realizing a new democratizing impulse right now, which is this is for everybody. The birthright of wisdom and insight and energy and pleasure and joy and responsibility for one another, these all go together, and they are for all of us. So I am grateful and honored to be able to share this with you. And I'm going to begin with an actual video. I'm going to show you a session. Most of what I'm going to be talking about today are tools for you to feel better, tools for you to work better, tools for you to grow your bandwidth, the information processing capacity of your brain and body and mind. All of that is going to be on the agenda today. And I want to show you how it looks clinically. Because in OI, we don't distinguish between what I do personally versus what I do professionally. Because what I found over the course of training therapists for 25 years, it's that they go together. So my work for myself then strengthens myself and allows me to be a better person for others. And then my professional work, my work in a session, is at the same time work on behalf of others, on behalf of myself. That is, I work in this way and I'm helping somebody and I gain benefit from that and I grow from that. So we're like playing back and forth on the two sides of this coin of personal growth and development. You know, the common way that we say this is that you can't take somebody further than you know yourself. And for our personal growth and for the experiential learners, we have this Organic Intelligence End of Trauma course. And this is just an 8-week course that is a deep dive into the experience of organic intelligence. And I'll talk to you more about that. Clinically speaking, we have the OI Heart training, the Human Empowerment and Resiliency training, where you can learn to do things like this. And this is why the end of trauma. I'm going to show you this video here of my work with a friend of mine and a person who is in one of my classes, whose name is Sabrina. And Sabrina and I were working in a class in a heart training in Hawaii. And let me just play it for you, and I'll share my screen and I'll show this to you. But this is trauma work, people. This is how we work, and you'll be very surprised. I'll just show it to you. You're gonna love this.
Life. I remember after that we would always. I had to go into Berkeley. I was going to school in Berkeley and.
Okay, so. There we have this, and this is completely typical. She says it's not the worst. Therapists are probably trained to go, oh, what was the worst? No, not in organic intelligence. Where she's giving us and telling us, oh, that's not the worst. That's pointing us to the one that we want to focus on. But she says, oh, there was the shaking, but I had my house. Fast forward now about 10 minutes. So she's talking about an earthquake process. And we are aiming to work. And let's fast forward here. We're aiming to work the biology, and it's the biology that is being worked here, and it's not the trauma story. We're going to get to this a lot later, but just know that we are working directly with the biology. What I'm doing in this interaction is coaching toward this whole system of like a biological biofeedback process. We're growing this ability to process and grow its capacity of energy processing. When your system, like Sabrina's, is more established in phase 3, then you see this fractal reiteration. And this is what I want you to see. Pleasanton, what a great name, first of all. Pleasanton. Let's see, back this up just a little bit. Pleasanton.
And they had this institute in the Pleasanton area, and then they had the main institute in Berkeley, and that was in 1989, right when that earthquake happened. And it was probably in my life, it was the start of really, really blue experience. I loved Pleasanton. I loved it. It's one of my.
Right? Do you see how the blossoming of blue is happening here? I love Pleasanton, and this is the blossoming of positive affect. We are going to be changing the whole field of therapy, which is focused on what's wrong and the problem, and the way that actually disorganizes states in the neurobiology. And we are going to refine the way that the system wants to unfold. And it's not just just think positive, be positive. It's not that, but there is a component of this that is looking at the way that systems want to be self-organizing, and that's what I'm tracking here. Let's see how that self-organization shows up. So, right, Pleasant? How great is that? Classic OI question. She says, oh, I love that. That's so blue. Question is, oh, good how? Blue how?
See, it makes me feel emotional.
You see the intensity comes up on the blue wave. In other words, there are tears coming. Her system is processing all of this information. The intensity is coming up, but it's through like appreciation. It's being touched. The tears aren't like, oh, I had this horrible experience. Same tears, same physiology, but the context of it is I'm touched, I'm moved, I'm appreciating.
Emotion comes through, and so the arousal cycle comes up, but it's riding the positive affect, not the trauma. It's riding the blue wave.
It's pretty.
Yeah. I've been there. Yeah, I know.
I felt like I was at home.
Felt like you're at home. You're that just like with Jada, mommy and daddy, and Julia and Jacob, just like at home.
See that on thejadavideo.com.
Before Pleasanton, so that was in 19. So my son, so I was almost.
Yeah. Is it okay to hang out with that feeling?
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Just sort of let yourself mull the like being home, Pleasanton. Now we're stabilizing those blue, reiterating, letting that network really reverberate. It's organizing information, right? That's the organizing information. Home. She named it previously, right? Oh, because, yeah, this earthquake was happening, but I was at home. And here it comes again, that fractal reiteration. So we're gonna reinforce that by letting that network reiterate the information that's going to be organized. It's a great name, first of all, like Pleasanton.
Had little storybook. They have the cutest little houses with all the flowers. You know, California has so many flowers.
Yeah. Another positive association.
It kind of reminds. It's really great. The trees, all the beautiful trees, and.
If you'd be willing just to call up some images of that, just
flip
through those like a photo book.
Well, so
go ahead.
So when I first moved there, the two things that I did was I had just had my son and I didn't want to work out. So I had a paper route, which I threw 300 papers. And I used to stick him in the back of the seat, the trunk of my car, and open the thing down. And then I also was a nanny for these two little girls. And they lived on Golden Street. And they were the cutest little girls. And so we kind of like, that was what my life was. And then I did soccer. So everything that I had.
What do you mean you did soccer?
I played soccer.
You played soccer?
Yeah, during that period.
For whom?
I played on a team.
And again, this is reiterating these blues, right? Played soccer? What? Sabrina's pretty amazing.
And blues and organic intelligence, we're looking for information that is coming from the biology that is intended to stabilize and then support the stability of that system. And so all the time, your biology is sending information from all of the channels of our experience. And those channels of experience are image, sensation, orientation, meaning, and affect. So that's I and S, image, sensation, orientation, meaning, and then affect. And always there is information coming through one of those channels that's meant to be organizing. And most of the channels are not going to be that organizing. So that's part of the training that we do and part of the work in the End of Trauma course, which is that we train ourselves by practice over and over again to look at, hey, which channel is going to actually be sending me the signals from my own biology that is meant to help me out, that is meant to really support me in feeling and being more organized from the biological standpoint. And it happens all the time. We're seeing it right here. She says, oh, yeah, I played soccer. Yeah.
Meet her at a training where she's mentoring one day.
Los Lobos. It was a co-ed team. And it was just a Sunday
pickup or Sunday.
It was serious business. We paid to play to win.
Oh, yeah. What position were you playing?
I played striker and midfield.
Wow.
And there was co-ed, so half of the guys, they were all Hispanic,
right. She's rad,
and they had used to been in their younger days professional, soccer players, and so their families, we used to get together and have. I mean, it was just this really great experience.
Oh, for sure.
So, anyways,
great.
So,
when you hear, the participation, we're just feeding back. Oh, for sure. What? Professional. Oh, that sounded so good.
And that's what we do. What I train people to do is to see in the client, image, sensation, orientation, meaning, and affect, and all of those channels of experience. We're training ourselves to see the information, the signals from the person's biology and isoma that is meant to be organizing and stabilizing, but they go past. And they go past because we're addicted to what's wrong. It's known, in science as the negativity bias. I'll talk about it in terms of negative reinforcement, basic science, but it means that I miss these signals that are meant to be actually helpful. And we'll work with this week after week. We have 8 weeks in the end of trauma course to work with this for ourselves. And so the good news is your biology wants to help you out and is helping you out. And all we have to do is practice looking and seeing and hearing and feeling how the system is signaling to you, hey, I got some love and support for you here. And let's see how this unfolds with Sabrina.
That's amazing, amazing time. So let's collect that a little bit, in a stabilizing blue sort of way. But let's do it in this way, where you sort of have almost like a mental picture book. And just flip through those, see a picture, and then feel your body in relationship to that. Like what feels good, and then flip to another picture, and you can describe that the picture if you want, or just go through and just let yourself enjoy a little scenic flip through of the picture book of Pleasant.
Do you want me to describe it? Or?
It's up to you. The main thing is that you have the experience. By the way, you hear the languaging, right? The picture book of Pleasant. I mean, that sort of says it all, doesn't it?
Receiving the messages of support from the biology, letting that reiterate within the mind and the memory, the associative network.
I just had a nice time in there.
Did you get a picture?
Yeah, I was looking at all sorts of different pictures.
Really? And body sensation when you get a picture?
Well, okay, so one of the biggest beautiful pictures was at Christmas time when the neighborhood, everybody decorated. And it's just really cool.
Right. And you see the affect coming up, like this is an arousal cycle coming up to new threshold. But it's because it was so beautiful. And that's how we like to work these thresholds, right? It's blue, but it's intense, right? There is intensity to that, but it's like beauty. It's being touched by beauty and the time and the nostalgia. It's a very, very positive experience. This is trauma work. This is organic intelligence. So cool.
Right? We normally think of like trauma work as we have to go back, we have to talk about it, we have to talk about our feelings about it, we have to go back to the event of before. The biology doesn't care about what happened in the past. We are living in the moment, right? And this is a radical sort of mindfulness approach because we are in the moment. We are right now, and that's because our biology lives in the right now. We don't have a past from the standpoint of the biology. From the standpoint of the biology, it has the goal to keep you okay, to keep you stable, and then to see if we can grow in our abilities and grow in our capacities and grow in our sense of safety, security, relationship, tribe. All of that is on the agenda from the standpoint of our biology. And in the end of trauma course, we're going to learn how to ride the waves of our biology, just like Sabrina is. The challenge for us isn't actually to be able to feel what's wrong or to feel the negative emotions. The challenge is our system is not accustomed to feeling the pleasure, the beauty, the intensity of affect in what is right and what is beautiful and what's happening. And that's trauma healing. That's why the end of trauma.
Feeling is Very sweet, right? It brings tears. It's really moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, our job here is enjoyment, and just take your time to really let this pleasure reach you, and to sense some of that in the body also, so that we don't miss it. Yeah. So that we get to digest the experience a little bit, the pleasure, the pleasantness.
I don't know, you live in California. You know, when they have Santa in his swim shorts.
Yeah, right. In the swimsuit and stuff, and it's like surfing Santa or something. Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. Totally.
We live near a creek, and we also live near a train. And so I always get fond memories when I hear train, because the train literally was from
Fond memories when I think of the train.
like this far. It was like right in my bedroom. And you could literally be on the phone.
Do you see that right there? That was the same image. That was the same sort of rhythm of the shaking when she described the shaking of the earthquake, right? So she is describing, and we've been stepping up the intensities all along the way until she's gotten to this point where the shaking comes. She's in her house in Pleasanton, right? Why is there an aversion to beautiful intensity, right? We'll talk about that. Thanks, Kevin.
Hey, hang on a minute, because we used to have
Train
the wall
went by.
phones.
See that shaking?
The wall.
Sure. See that shaking?
A lot.
Remember where we saw that shaking gesture before? Earthquake, right? Train goes by.
Whole house would vibrate.
Sure. Whole house would vibrate. Yeah.
It was so fun. I mean, it was.
Right? The whole house would vibrate. She is now telling us in symbolic language, oh, these are the states that are associated with that shaking system, that shaking situation. But look how positive it is. Now, it takes a long time to get here. Sabrina, worked well and worked hard to get here because people don't start out here. We're seeing a system that is operating in phase 3. So, there are lots of systems that say, oh, we're going to do this, or we're going to do this, but, well, we're going to work with developmental disturbance. The trick is understanding the relationship of these 3 phases to one another and talking to the phase that's here, right? Really working with the system that is active in the moment. So let's just see a little bit more of how Sabrina is working.
I just really
like looking cool. So let's just do that one, for instance. On the phone, and and then train goes by, and you see how I am communicating that, right? I am pinging specifically that associative network by making the same gesture. Train goes by, it's that shaking. She is processing her earthquake right now, but unconsciously, right? Consciously, I'm in the house, I'm on the phone. And that's how this works. That's the implicit processing that comes around. When you get phase 3, that system will process cycle after cycle implicitly. Ultimately, we would probably go directly to the event itself, but that's basically, by that time, it's all over but the shouting. We've already processed so much of this by working first through these naturally occurring implicit cycles. I'm aware of that. I'm tracking that. That's my job. My job is also to keep it implicit, but allow that experience to be full so it reaches its threshold and then deactivates.
And so, what we're talking about here, when I'm talking about these implicit cycles, this is the end of trauma. The biology wants to process these cycles. That is, the whole aim of our endeavor here has to do with the understanding that the biology wants to grow its bandwidth. It wants to be able to have relationship among all the aspects of experience, all of these isoma channels, right? Image, sensation, orientation, meaning, and affect. This is us. all the relationship among all of these, right? And so, all of these have their proponents, and in the image channel, you have guided, you have visualization, you have guided imagery, you have meditations. In the sensation channel, you have the somatic practice. Hakomi is one, somatic experiencing, sensory motor, trauma releasing exercises. In the meaning channel, you have the cognitive, the CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, and so on. Or the affect channel, really tracking the emotions, processing the emotions, looking at attachment work and the way that affect regulation is such a big deal. In organic intelligence, because I've studied all of those, I can train you to work and see in all of those, and to see then how they relate together. This is a systems perspective, which means we are all about the relationship between all of these. And when they are all working together well, then we have really something special. The whole emphasis in organic intelligence is the encouragement to resync your psychology. Resync your psychology, because our psychology, it has trended us toward ideas of what's wrong and the challenges we're facing, and says, oh, we need to delve into the problem, or we need to get away from the problem. We have to suppress the problem, or we have to relax and get away from the problem. Still, the focus is on what's wrong. That's the negativity bias. Positive psychology is coming toward us in this way of saying, we've got to look toward cultivating gratitude and kindness and metta practice. All of that is as a component. But from the standpoint of complexity science, we say that really the aim of our system is to be able to relearn its relationship to intensity. That is, there is an ideal, like, thermostatic set point. So this is a thermostat that's set at 72. And when a system is working well, it will come up, it'll head up to 73, and then say the air conditioner comes on and it cools things down again, and it cools it down until about 71, and then it shuts off, and then the temperature comes back up, and then when it hits 72 again. So the range here is like 71 to 73. Something like that, 71 to 73. But in a system that is not working well, where the thermostat is really not working well, then the system will head up to 85, and then it'll cool down to 55, and it overshoots. It has this wide and wild bipolar range. What organic intelligence does is trains therapists and coaches to be able to then see how to support a system so that it is able to move naturally into finding that ideal intensity threshold, that perfect little bit of intensity that then catalyzes the system's rhythm of self-organization. It's like your car. If it's out of tune, it means that the pistons are not firing in sync. They're off, and so that really compromises the system's power. And then what that means for our biology is we are out of sync. You've heard of biorhythms, circadian rhythms, and so on. And all of these ups and downs, with the rising and the setting of the sun, are meant to be nested. So all of them are working harmonically or in sync. When our systems are more in sync, we are operating efficiently and happily. When our systems are out of sync, we're inefficient, we are unhappy, right? And so what I'm teaching people is to see how the system is saying, hey, here's the way to get back in sync. Here's the support for your biology to do that resynchronization. And it's not about what's wrong. It's about what's going to be organizing for the system. And in our end of trauma course, we'll take a look at all of our basic channels, all of these I-soma channels, and look at image, sensation, orientation, meaning, and affect, so that we can return to a synchronized sense of all of those, where all of those are working together and feeding back and informing one another. Okay, that's our gig. Let me show you. Let me check in with your questions also. Mary Carroll is saying, seems very similar to Hakomi, although that was therapy, not coaching. What are the theoretical roots of this work? The theoretical roots of this work are many, and it really goes back to the integrated systems approach. Complexity science in particular. Ron Kurtz spoke about complexity science. However, the focus is on understanding, and really one has to study one has to study the work with image, the work with sensation, the work with cognition, and the work with emotion, so that you begin to get an integrated sense of what signals coming through those channels are going to be the signals from the biology for self-organization. There are certain signals that will come through, and understanding the language in each of those channels is very particular. So I learned to speak in image. I learned to speak in sensation. I learned to speak in cognition, and I learned to speak in emotion. I learned that language, and each of these are particular language. We don't have time, most of us, to learn all of those. And so I had, spent a bunch of years learning that to be able to bring that to you in the interaction. The interaction among those is really key, and it's a systems approach. So that's really it. The psychology has been so steeped in what's wrong, so steeped in like Freudian psychodynamic theory and so on. And that's really why therapy has continued to be off track, because our systems become addicted to attending to what's wrong. It's a literal addiction. It's not a metaphorical kind of thing that I'm talking about. This is what is called negative reinforcement, and just negative reinforcement is maybe the most one of the more misunderstood elements of science, but it means basically that a system that goes into some level of aversion, whether consciously or unconsciously, when it comes out, when it misses pleasanton and goes over into aversionton, then when it actually begins to feel better again, it does something very particular and very damaging for Homo sapiens, which is that as soon as we leave the positive reinforcement framework, the way we're supposed to work is that we're supposed to work where I like we saw with Sabrina. It's like, oh, I'm really touched when I think about, that time in my home and with my kids, or with Los Lobos, right? Or with the Santa with the surfing shorts on, right? I'm so moved, and then that intensity comes up, and then it passes, right? And so that shows me where that intensity threshold is. And as soon as we leave pleasanton and it becomes aversive, even unconsciously aversive, then it becomes negative reinforcement. And negative reinforcement means that when it feels better, it creates addiction, because it creates a situation that communicates for us. It basically, the way to feel better is by feeling worse first. The way to feel better is by feeling worse first. And if you think about it, that's therapy. I feel worse. I come in and I talk about what's wrong, my problems, what I'm going to work on today. Or I talk about, happy thoughts. And meanwhile, I'm going, well, what are my real problems here? But then the system accelerates. It becomes more or less uncomfortable. And then when it feels better, it does that negative reinforcement thing and says, oh, the way to feel better is by feeling worse first, right? And that's why the end of trauma. We have to stop tracking trauma. We have to stop tracking sensation of what's wrong and activation. We have to stop attending disproportionately to the feelings that are so uncomfortable. Not because we're trying to ignore them, not because they're not true, not because cognitions aren't true, none of that. It's because we have to think from a biological standpoint that those are meant to and will continue to keep the system stuck in what's wrong. And it's not malicious. The biology is just executing its prime directive. The prime directive is don't fall apart, don't die, don't disintegrate. From the standpoint of the biology, disintegration, and it means death. Our systems operate according to this principle of biological synchrony. We are an organism because our cells learn to work like the pistons of a car. They work together, right? The heart's pacemaker is 10,000 cells, 10,000 cells that are all ticking, and they learn to tick together. They learn to tick at the same time. And we're in an interesting time now in science where the physicists are talking to the biologists, who are talking to the psychologists, who are talking to the systems theorists. And really now it is mapped out. There are equations for biological synchrony, how it happens, why it happens. And so our heart's pacemaker, those 10,000 cells, then turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off. And the heart contracts and relaxes, contracts, relaxes. It's a two-sided system. It works, it rests. It works, it rests. And it's being influenced. That is, it is in sync with another system. And that other system is the respiratory system. So when I breathe in, heart rate goes up. I breathe out, heart rate goes down. I breathe in, I breathe out. It goes faster, it goes slower. Everything is working in that kind of oscillatory pattern, and it is synced then, and that simple system is meant to be synced then within the larger cycle. If you were to take the average like heart rate over the daytime and then compare it to the average rate during the nighttime, daytime faster, nighttime slower. I am awake and I'm asleep. Right? All of that is happening in this pulsative pattern. Peristalsis is pulsation. Our cells are pulsing and ticking like fireflies in the night, blinking in together. The frogs outside of my window singing together at the same time. Right? That's biological synchrony. And that, when it's disrupted, that is disrupted by trauma, yes, but by the state of our situation now, which is our Homo sapien family has lost its tribe. We are basically a tribe of people looking for our tribe. We're having a Nemo moment because we are no longer the hunter-gatherers that are living in the Pleistocene, right? That are in small tribal groups where we care for each other and are responsible to each other, and where it's felt that, oh, how you're doing really matters to me because we matter, like we are what matters. The stress of a modern civilization is that it's not just the disintegration of the nuclear family, it's the disintegration of the family, of the clan, of the tribe, of the species, the disintegration. Now, and so the disintegration begins with biological disintegration or biological desynchrony. Right? And what organic intelligence is bringing, what I'm hoping to really share with you and to inspire you to join in our efforts here, is to resync our psychology, to find the messages that are made in your DNA. This is ready to happen. Your resynchronization is ready to happen. And it will happen if we can learn the language of image, sensation, orientation, meaning, and affect, so that we can send ourselves and reiterate, bathe and steep ourselves in the messages of reorganization. Right? It's a complex system. If you're wanting to work with it clinically, it will take a little while. Our heart training, the human empowerment and resiliency training, that's a 3-year training. But if you want to get it for yourself, you can get a lifetime access to the End of Trauma course, and I'll talk with you more about that. The End of Trauma course, let's say a little bit about that. Actually, let me first check in on your questions. I see some chats here. Let me check in here. Yep, okay, the audio, we're working on that. Okay, yep, thank you. All righty, great. All right. Thank you. I'm getting tech support here. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm going to provide you some tech support as well. You know, the technology of your biology. That's what we're going to be looking at here. I'm going to share my screen here, desktop, and I'm going to bring us into the End of Trauma. The End of Trauma course is an 8-week class. Here is you can go to the Organic Intelligence website here, and organic intelligence, and you can you'll be able to find this page where you can find out more about the end of trauma and even sign up to find out more still. The end of trauma course. Let me give you a little tour of the end of trauma course. It's 8 weeks, and each week we have a specific trajectory of each week. There's a theme, and each day there are sub themes within that we explore. And so in our first week, we're looking at the overarching orientation to the whole process. Then each week we look at this ISOMA framework. This ISOMA framework, which itself traverses these 2 cycles of ups and downs. So we look at image, we look at sensation, we look at orientation, and orientation, by the way, is connecting to the environment through the senses. We look at meaning, we look at cognition, and then we look at affect. Then we look at the way they go together, right? And the whole framework of this unfolding. Let me show you one of the. Let's see. I'm going to try to take some of your technical support advice here and see if I can get. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if I can do the same as system. Okay. Each day, let me go back here. Each day, you get a variety of supports. So, first of all, you get this workbook. You get this 180-page workbook, but people mostly, when they start out, they'll go in and listen to these easy-to-use strategic use of perception practices. You can see this one. It's 10 minutes and 52 seconds, and you do that in the morning. And there's one for every day of the week there, and this is specifically designed to build this receptacle, build our consciousness and build our awareness toward the channels of organizing information that your system is speaking. And in the first week of our work, it's image. That image channel and how important the image channel is. And I'm helping you understand and learn the language of your biology when it's speaking image, And then we will go to the next week where it's sensation week. And we're going to learn each day about sensation and have a sensational week here. Right. And so I'll talk about the value of sensation, or the role of sensation in this entire process. Here we are in our sensational week. This is our 3rd week in the End of Trauma course, and we're going to be talking about sensation. We're doing our ISOMA wheel on the way to integration of all of our channels of experience bit by bit. And we're really just chipping away at the leftovers of the what's wrong attention, that negativity bias. So last week we really were working in image channel and really working to build up our capacity of attention to the image channel, recognizing that as a distinct channel, and then really finding our way to practice attending to the image process that is really going to feel well and feel supportive for us. This week, it's sensation. There's a lot of talk in the world of therapy in particular around somatic approaches, and you probably know that I've been one of the leaders in that field for 20 years. And so it's said to be about embodiment and mindfulness. But in fact, we're having a lot of dialogue in this community now because of this impulse from organic intelligence. I did early studies, and interoception was on key studies about interoception, which is the science term of paying attention to the body's sensation. And this work really came out of, in many ways, the mindfulness meditative traditions, and in terms of the impulse of somatic psychology on the west coast of California, the human potential movement that was centered in the Bay Area and Esalen Institute. Alan Watts, for instance, contacted a woman named Charlotte Selber from Europe, and she brought in this tremendous impulse of the therapeutic use of sensation. Right. So If you are interested in this process, understanding this process really from a science standpoint, then every day you get an informational video. I think that one is about 10 minutes. But the main thing really are these SUPs, the strategic use of perception practice. And they are these guided meditations, really, where we practice and receive the input that we wouldn't receive otherwise. And it is complemented then through our work as well in the workbook that we have. And every day you'll get all of this writing from the workbook. This is a sample of our workbook page. This is, I think, from day 2, and then really getting the information that we need and the way that it is integrated with the rest of the learning course. Like before this evening reading, download the MP3 from the bonus strategic use of perception section, week 1 bonus orientation, and we'll use that. It's fully integrated. So you would read through, your evening guided thought process, talking about here the primitive approach avoidance biology, hijacked by the what's wrong attention. And then you would go to your SUP area and your strategic use of perception practice, and there are bonus SUPs, right? There are massive bonuses here. There are bonuses like the bonuses. Let me see. Back. Back to the library. Row. Bonus nerd outs. All right, here are the bonuses. There are bonus SUPs, there are bonus infos, there's bonus nerd out section, right? So if you're really into the science, you can get that. Now, I do every week a live coaching. So you got questions, I'm here for you. How do I apply this to my life? How do I work with this with my family? How do I handle anxiety? What about my sleep issues? Right, I'm there for you. There are weekly webinars that I'm doing for you as well. The nerd out section, if you're, I'm a member of this club. The art and science, freeze and the polyvagal theory, 40 minutes on freeze and the polyvagal theory, or the bonus theories about human evolution and human image channel. You get information that way, or you can really look at the integration, as I was saying, of the SUPs, the strategic use of perception practice, with your journal, your workbook. And so you would come here and listen to this journal. Makes it easy for you.
Is just do a little exercise right where you are. And this exercise, you won't need a pen or paper for this. So just get as comfortable as you like, wherever you are. And then I'd like you to do something in particular, and that's going to be as little as possible, except this. Just let your eyes go where they want to go.
Why not? Take a moment now. Just let your eyes go where they want to go.
So as you're there, as I'm here, I'm just going to let my eyes go where they want to go. Let them roam. And this is interesting because I'm letting the attention into the external environment, but I'm not directing. I'm just letting this exploration happen and letting my eyes go where they want to go. And I invite you to check things out in that way as well. And just seeing, staying really in the seeing channel. If thinking comes up, we might just notice that, but then come back into the seeing channel. And just letting the eyes go where they want to go and see what they want to see. And just note for yourself what the eyes like to see in this moment.
So what was that? Where did the eyes like to go? Right, this is orientation, connecting to the environment through the senses. This is completely counterintuitive. Right, that is therapy and mindfulness suggest we should be paying attention internally. But in fact, the biology needs to map your system in its environment. And the better mapping we have, then the better we are going to be feeling, and the better then our system will be regulating itself. Right? And so in the end of trauma course, you have those SUPs, the strategic use of perception practices every day. You have the webinars, the live coaching. You have the informational videos. You can nerd out as much as you like, right? There's an online community that you get to join, right? All of this really clued into really creating a new experience for your biology. We're in the headwinds of the age of disintegration. If you look around, probably your community, the world, the country, things are on an edge, right? The global climate change is really problematic. So how are we going to really be able to face the challenges of our day? And we saw it with Sabrina. The way to go is through joy and pleasure. And I talk about that, why that is so evolutionarily correct in the end of trauma course. So I am seeing that we're right here at, Mary Carol, thank you for asking. There are transcripts. Yes, there are transcripts of the info videos. There are transcripts also of the webinars, or there's the info videos, transcripts. That's what we got. But you have, when you get the end of trauma course, you have it for a lifetime. And what we found is that people are, and I encourage this from the get-go, people are taking the course over and over again. That is, they're doing it and they're going, oh, wow, I'm beginning to get the hang of this, and like, oh, I'm going to go through this again. And people are saying, oh, the second time through is so much better even than the first. I'm getting this to you for a lifetime. You can use this for a lifetime. And I want to encourage you, if you have partners who might be interested, you get that up for a special deal. Like for $195, you can add your partner, so really getting a hold of this means that you are shifting the way that your neurobiology is functioning in a more efficient manner. Right. So there will be a lot more offerings. Sign up for our website, newsletters, and so on. Get on the wait list, or join in the list for the end of trauma course. This webinar is going to be on replay. Also, we'll get information to you in that way. And really want to be able to share this information as broadly as possible. If you have people that are struggling and suffering, that's a desync issue. And so resync is our issue, and your biology wants to bring that to you. And I want to bring it to you in this end of trauma course. I hope you'll join me for that. It's such a pleasure, really, to be able to join with others who are really learning this and discovering a new alternative to how healing really happens. So I hope this is interesting to you. If you're a professional, if you're into the clinical work, the human empowerment and resiliency training is a possibility. But if you're an experiential learner, if you like to get this in your bones where it really matters, the end of trauma course is really for you. Right. I'll be doing another webinar series called Clinical Mindfulness. That'll be coming up. Meditation teachers will be on there, other therapists, midwives, others who are using organic intelligence to really see how the natural unfolding happens, how ease is the name of the game, and how and why the job is enjoyment. Okay. I have enjoyed being with you. I look forward to being able to have more conversation with you. This is a very brief introduction, but thank you for joining, and I look forward to being in touch. Our email is for the end of trauma course, EOTC, end of trauma course at organicintelligence.org. And we are Organic Intelligence, and inviting you to join us because your organic intelligence is what really matters, right? And I'd be delighted to share this time with you. Thank you for being a part of this, and yeah, be in touch. Thank you much.